Opening title: Safe Toddles, Toddler Cane.
Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the reason we're working so hard to talk about safe mobility in 2018 for toddlers who are severely visually impaired and blind. So what is the story behind the cane, briefly, and what is safe mobility for blind kids? Why do we want to wear our cane? Those are the three things I'd like to get at today. The story behind the cane is one of going back to look at our history. I was able to look and read the literature that was published from 1780s until present. In the 1900s, there was an explosion of people who were visually impaired, kids, and it overwhelmed the schools. And in that process of trying to figure out what to do for this large number of kids came a great deal of organization, publishing, searching. And in reading those publications, I found there were some links which seem to all come back to safe mobility. The first link is the more severe your visual impairment, the more difficulty you have moving around independently. And there's a lot of effort has been put into trying to solve that. Why don't they move? Why don't little kids move after they stand up? And so that seems like a real one-to-one. Why don't they move? Because when they do move, it's unpredictable. The next step could be safe. The next step could be a cliff. It could be a toy. It could be into a wall. When you don't know what the next step holds because you can't see it, you're at the mercy of that next step. And that's a very difficult place to be. So it's not that kids are not motivated. It's not that parents aren't helping them be as independent as possible. It's a simple fact that you need vision for safe mobility. The vision, when you have vision that can tell you if there's an obstacle in your path, that could be a drop-off, could be an object, it could be a different surface. When it goes from sidewalk to grass or asphalt, those are different surfaces, and it's important to know what the surface is, whether or not you want to walk on it, etc. So all of these obstacles are what we avoid every day. And if you have 20/20 vision, you walk around, you see where you want to go. It's a very simple process. You look for a clear path. You look for a path that's good for your feet, and you get on that path. And if you're not paying attention, that's when accidents happen, right? So the people do get injured even if they can see 20/20. And that's often the joke, right, of blind people. Like, you could see where you're going, so what's your excuse? So when you can't use your vision to avoid these obstacles, and that may mean that you have vision that allows you to see other things, but when it comes to down by your feet, it's not much help. Then you have a problem that could injure your life further. We know it makes you slow down. It causes people to slow down, but it also can create additional disabilities through the falls, through the accidents. And then we also know that it can change kids' trajectory in their development. When a child is born blind, up until now, up until Safe Toddler Cane, there has been no answer to the question, well, what do we do about the falling over stuff? What do we do there? And briefly, the answer has been, that's a good thing, okay? Because it means they're walking and they need to walk. And so part of walking when you're blind is falling over stuff. So Safe Toddles is challenging that notion. It's challenging the myth that it's a good idea, it's a nurturing idea to allow blind kids to fall over stuff. We're saying, I don't think that's a good idea anymore. I think we've had 2-3+ centuries of testing that notion, and so far it really hasn't panned out. Currently, when you look at the literature of early intervention, you see that 30% of our kids who are severely visually impaired and blind, those kids, they have developmental delays. So they are delayed, and that's with early intervention. It's with physical therapy. It's with every good intention. Very often these kids do learn to sit, stand, cruise, and some wait and wait and wait to let go and walk on their own, and with a great deal of effort they will do it. But when they do it, then they run into the troubles we talked about earlier. The 3 previews are not, they don't have visual preview of their surfaces. And so that's why I just kept playing around with the idea, how can we give babies a cane? And we've tried. Long canes have been tried, and handheld toys have been tried. And I just feel that when we all collectively watch, we know that kids can push their toys and will do it, and some will do it for longer than others. But it's an incomplete solution, because pushing a toy, if we think about how often they do it, it's probably not very often. It's not often enough to be more than 50% of the day. And when we're talking about believing in your next step, having sufficient warning, next step warning, that should be about 90 to 100% of the time correct. You should have warning about what's in your next step all the time, not just less than 50% of the time. If it's less than 50% of the time, that's less than chance that you'll have a device when you need it to tell you important information. And it has to be above chance in order for someone to really buy into the trustworthiness of something that they're bothering to hold on to and push. So if you can get your child to push their toy everywhere they go, at home, in the community, at school, and it's like less than 10% of the time that they don't, then it's a workable solution, and I think it's going well, and fine. If their vision is such that they can avoid all obstacles and they don't need anything else, then that's fine too. And if there are only certain visual environments, like the dark, where we turn on the lights and we need light, if that doesn't work, then maybe it's only then that they need it. But when they do need it, they need it all the time. They need safe mobility all the time. So that's the problem with push toys and often AMDs, is that when you're below 5, you have a hard time keeping track of your stuff, right? You can't keep track of your shoes. You don't keep track of your jacket. You don't keep track of what's going on. Like, mom's in charge. So the one thing you can't be in charge of is someone's vision, right? So what sighted kids are doing is they're keeping track of safe space, and they're learning how to move through it, and they're getting better and better and better as they practice at moving through space gracefully and quickly. And our kids who can't see where they're going are trying very hard to learn how to go through space, but unfortunately, because they can't see the next step, they can't master quickly and efficiently and gracefully through the space. They just can't, because they can't see. So the cane is not also very good because of the same thing as the push toys, that it's very rarely in the right place at the right time, and it's very rarely used. So when we're talking about little kids, we're talking about how to bring them safe mobility so that it's 90 to 100% of the time. And that's where the wearable cane idea has come in. And we are saying, can we build a wearable cane? Is it possible to wear your cane? And right now we're saying we have a prototype that's doing a lot of good for a lot of kids. We have distributed this prototype to almost 100 people, kids, and it's slowly getting tested out by kids of different sizes. We've got some going to middle school kids. We've got, the youngest was 19 months old. I feel that it is definitely for kids who are learning to stand up and starting to walk. The 11 months old, that's where we should really begin thinking about having safe mobility. And from there, just keep growing in size until they're able to make a conscious choice and effort to keep track of their safe mobility by themselves. And that will happen just like it always happens. As we get older, we take more ownership of ourselves. So there's really no rush to that, because it will happen. as to the developmental potential of any child to do that. And this will give them an advantage of always having known safe mobility. And that's exactly how a wearable cane works for a toddler who can't see the path ahead. It illuminates the clear path, and then where it says go, it's clear. They are always going to have 90 to 100% security. That's a true statement. And then when it stops them, whether it's a stationary object or a heavy object, they're going to interact with that object by manipulating the cane either to get away from it or go towards it. Or they're going to know it's there, though. They're going to get that 2 steps of warning that that object is there, and then they'll have the choice to decide what they want to do with that information. And that's something they don't have right now, as we've discussed. They don't have the 2 steps of warning about what's ahead, and that's pretty sufficient. 2 steps, maybe a little more. Some people like more, not less. And it allows them to have the information we all have. Long canes need to do that too. And holding a long cane and having it off to the side if you're blind baby is not providing you with safe mobility. The only way to obtain safe mobility and next step warning is when the cane is in the path of your next footfall, 2 steps ahead of your next footfall. And this cane that they wear is an autonomous arc. It's wide enough to cover the steps. It has a 1-inch clearance in the middle, and that means that it's autonomous arc. It doesn't have to go side to side. It's always covering both steps, 2 steps ahead, because it's the shape of that. The wearable cane is an autonomous arc. It's also hands-free because you can let go, and it will continue to have the 2 steps ahead. It doesn't have to be hands-free. Many kids hold on to it. They do like to run with it. Not only that, we have seen real change in the kids with visual impairment who are wearing these white canes. Wearable white canes are changing what it means to have access to safe mobility. Now you can have tactile information about the path ahead, and this brings kids with visual impairment into an equal situation with their sighted peers. They don't have to depend on anyone else to tell them if there's a clear path. They don't have to depend on anyone's vision. They can tell if there's a clear path ahead.
Now you can try running.
Well, that's the story of the cane, safe mobility, and how the wearable white cane works.
For more information, contact info@safetoddles.com.